Plastic Free with Beth Terry next on Enviro Close-Up. Welcome to Enviro Close-Up. I am Karl Grossman. Plastic has become ubiquitous, but along has come Beth Terry, first with her blog, myplasticfreelife.com, and now with her new book, Plastic Free, How I Kick the Plastic Habit and How You Can Too. Welcome, Beth.
Thank you so much for having me.
A pleasure. Now, how did it all start? You write in the book how you were a material girl back in, I mean, not that long ago, 2007, but suddenly you had a plastic epiphany.
Yeah.
How did it come about?
Well, I was a material girl. I mean, I would request double plastic bags at the grocery store. You know, and I drank bottled water, and I lived on convenience foods, microwavable dinners. And I kind of considered myself to be an environmentalist. Because I gave money to Greenpeace and organizations like that. But one night, while I was sitting at home at my computer, I stumbled across an article about the plastic pollution problem in the ocean, which 5 years ago was not something I'd ever heard of. And I saw a photo of a dead albatross chick, which was, the flesh was worn away, and inside all you could see were bottle caps and everyday plastic pieces, like the kinds of things that I was using on an everyday basis. And my heart just broke, and also I just made this connection that my personal actions really did have an impact on creatures that I hadn't even previously known existed. And so I thought, I've got to do something about this. I've got to change how I'm living. And always somebody to take on a challenge. I thought, I wonder if it would be possible to live without plastic. And you know, that took me about a half a second. I thought, no, probably not possible to live without it, but I wonder if I could not acquire any more. So I created a blog so I could track my progress. And as I would use something up, I would try to find a plastic-free alternative. And I also wanted to find out what my personal plastic footprint was, so I set up a bag under my kitchen table, and I started putting all my plastic waste into there every week, and then posting pictures of it and listing it out on my blog. And I'm actually an accountant for a living, so I made a spreadsheet, and I would tally it all up very meticulously. And I thought I was really just doing it for me, but the blog attracted an audience because there are a lot of other people out there who are really concerned about plastic pollution and want to know what they can do. And after about 5 years, or after about 3 years, I guess, I had acquired so much information, practical information about things that we can do instead, as well as information about plastic, about the chemicals in plastic, that I decided to write a book to share that information with a wider audience and also make it easy for people to go step by step to reduce the plastic in their own lives.
Now, when you speak about the article you read of plastics in the ocean, that had to do with the Pacific Gyre.
Right.
And I don't know how many viewers are familiar with. I mean, that's not just a little spot in the Pacific. Describe what the article was about and what you've learned since about the Pacific Gyre.
Well, it's an area in the middle of the Pacific Ocean where the currents go around and around. And so anything that's floating in the ocean will accumulate there. And this area is huge. Some say it's twice the size of Texas. Some people say it's the size of the United States. Estimates vary about how big it is, but what we know is that there is mostly what's accumulated there is plastic. That there's not just one gyre, there are 5 gyres in the world's oceans, and they are finding plastic in all of them. And it's not what a lot of people think of now. the media somehow has given people the impression that it's like a floating island of plastic that you could walk on or that you could see on Google Maps or something. It's not. It's more like a plastic soup of tiny little pieces. And that's worse because it's harder to clean up. And also, those little tiny pieces get mixed in with the plankton, which is the bottom of the food chain. And then fish eat that, and bigger fish eat them, and we end up getting those chemicals inside us.
I mean, you spend several pages in the book talking about how out of this particular plastic jar, well, bird life in particular, they gobble up the plastic. I mean, it's just horrible.
It's very sad. There are organizations that have come about now to try to clean up the plastic in the ocean, and there are schemes to gather up the plastic and recycle it or make it into fuel and various things like that. And those might be useful, but as long as we're still manufacturing all this stuff, and as long as it's still pouring into the ocean, then those cleanup efforts aren't going to make any difference. We really have to reduce the amount of plastic that we're consuming in the first place.
It's kind of interesting in the book. I think you add a word. I mean, normally we talk about reduce, reuse, and recycle, the 3 R's. But you add, as the first R word, you say refuse.
That's right.
Refuse.
Right. Refuse single-use disposable plastics. Just say no thank you. You know, we don't have to accept plastic grocery bags, plastic bottles, plastic wrappers, plastic containers, plastic straws, plastic utensils. We can say no thanks to all of those things. And I've found ways around all of them.
And you, the one-time material girl, I mean, you show in the book how you, all over the place, have learned ways to avoid using plastics. I mean, there's pages and pages of tips, and it's done in a very punchy, colorful, frankly, easy to read and easy to absorb style. Talk about, for example, household cleaning or personal care. I mean, a lot of plastic involved in both those areas. Tell us how you've beaten the plastic bugaboo.
Well, you know what? When it comes to personal care, one of the most important things to me is just to simplify. And baking soda has become one of my best friends. So, for instance, baking soda is the best deodorant I've ever used. I would use it now even if I wasn't trying to avoid plastic. And baking soda I can buy in a bulk bin, either bringing my own bag or it comes in a cardboard box. People brush their teeth with baking soda. I don't. I personally have found a product called Lush Toothy Tabs, which are little tablets that you crunch between your teeth and they foam up and you can brush your teeth with them. And my toothbrush is made out of bamboo. There are a couple of things you can do for your hair. So there are shampoo bars and conditioner bars, which are solid. They're like soap, but they're actually shampoo and conditioner. So there's no container involved. There's no plastic container. And that's something that people do. But I myself actually use a method that's called no poo. And what that means is you wash your hair with a combination of baking soda and water, and you basically just scrub your scalp with it and rinse it out. And then you condition your hair with a combination of apple cider vinegar and water. And you know, people are a little skeptical about that at first because they think they don't want to go around smelling like vinegar. But the smell dissipates right away, and vinegar is very, very, very good for the hair. And it gets the tangles out, it makes it nice and smooth. And so that's what I do.
I mean, talking about items that, plastic items normally that people are really able to avoid, and you've shown the way, shower curtains.
Yeah. Well, there are cloth shower curtains. There are hemp shower curtains, which are, supposedly hemp is a naturally antifungal material. Cotton shower curtains that you can just throw in the washing machine. I personally haven't had to deal with it because we have shower doors, glass shower doors.
Furniture, mattresses.
Yeah.
How can you avoid plastic in both?
Well, there are companies out there now that are making furniture and mattresses out of more natural materials. There's natural latex foam, which comes from a tree. There are cotton And wool. Wool is actually a very good flame retardant. And so things that are filled with wool don't necessarily have to have toxic chemical flame retardants added to them. There are lots of good choices. Carpet is another thing that is often made out of plastic and has nasty adhesives. So for that, I just don't go for the carpet at all. I like a nice wood floor.
You go to an event and the drinks are in plastic cups, and how do you get around all that?
Well, if I know that I'm going to an event where wine is going to be served, or any kind of beverage, I actually have a little stainless steel wine glass that fits in my purse. I brought it with me, and I just whip it out, and it gets attention from a lot of other people at the party. If they have to drink out of plastic and I'm drinking out of this nice little goblet, then they say, wait, I want that. I would rather be drinking out of that. All my friends at this point know, and generally have gotten rid of the plastic in their kitchens and don't provide disposable plastic at their parties. But I just like to be prepared. I also have bamboo cutlery that I carry in my purse with me wherever I go, just in case. I have a glass drinking straw. And if I'm going to a restaurant, then I'll bring a little stainless steel container with me in case there are leftovers, so I don't have to take a disposable container home with me.
Now the plastics industry, and it's quite the industry, led by, as you note, the American Chemistry Council with its motto, "Plastic made it possible." They give us this pitch that, well, plastics are recyclable. And you get into that in some depth. Let's get into it in some depth now. What about the recyclability of plastics?
Well, recycling plastic, there's a reason that recycle is the very last of those R's that you mentioned. Recycling may be necessary for the plastic that we have left, but it's not a solution overall to the plastic problem for several reasons. First of all, plastic recycling is better referred to as downcycling because it doesn't really close the loop. A plastic bottle, for example, isn't going to generally be recycled into another plastic bottle, but into something like polar fleece or carpet or some secondary product. And those things are not generally recycled. It slows down the process from cradle to landfill, but it doesn't completely close the loop. The other thing is that there are so many other problems with plastic, and there's more impact produced by the production of plastic than in the disposal of it. So people who say that recycling is the answer because recycling keeps plastic out of the landfill, they're not considering all the other plastic that's still being created upstream, all the disposable bottles, disposable containers, disposable bags that we're still producing. And they're not considering the chemicals that are used to produce those things. In neighborhoods in the Gulf, which is where the petrochemical industry is, there are people who have high rates of rare cancers, and there are women who have had disproportionately large numbers of hysterectomies and endometriosis. And these are because those neighborhoods are being poisoned by something simple as a plastic water bottle. More chemicals are added to those plastics when they're manufactured into an actual container or other type of plastic item, a dish or a bowl. Because if you look at the number on the bottom of a plastic container, the number in the triangle, that number tells you what the polymer is, what the specific type of plastic is, but it doesn't tell you what else has been added to it. And so there are thousands of chemicals that can be added to plastic to affect the strength or the flexibility or the slipperiness or even antibacterial qualities. And anything that's added to plastic can leach out of it. And so when plastic is subjected to rough treatment or heat or light or stressed in any way, the longer you have it, the more it's going to leach those chemicals out. And the plastics industry is not required to disclose what any of those chemicals are to us. And believe me, I've tried. I've called, I've talked to companies. I've had PR reps from the plastics industry contact me to write about their brand new biodegradable plastic or some miracle plastic that they've created that they want me to write about. And I'll say, well, what makes it biodegradable? And they say, well, we have this additive that we put in there that makes it break down. And I'll say, well, what's the additive? And they say, that's our secret. And I say, well, I can't tell my readers that this is a safe product if you won't tell me what it is. And they say, well, for proprietary reasons, we can't reveal that information. So I can't for sure tell anybody that any one particular plastic is safe because I don't know what's in it.
And among the toxics that are really terrible, BPA. I mean, finally, the government, the U.S. government acted to explain the story of BPA and how the U.S. government failed to.
Yeah.
I mean, in Europe, it was a different story.
Yeah. So bisphenol A is a hormone disruptor. It's a chemical that mimics hormones in the human body. It disrupts development of children. It can lead to cancers. It can lead to all kinds of things, like diabetes and autism. Even, I mean, every day there's another study that's linking BPA to some other malady. And so there's been a lot of pressure on manufacturers to get BPA out of their products. And there's been a lot of pressure on the FDA to ban it. But so far the FDA had not done that. BPA is especially found, or had been especially found, in hard polycarbonate bottles, which is what a lot of plastic baby bottles were made out of. And also reusable drinking bottles and those 5-gallon jugs that water, you know, you get water in. But what happened was, because of consumer pressure, the manufacturers of baby bottles voluntarily removed bisphenol A from baby bottles in the United States. And once all the manufacturers in the United States of baby bottles had gotten the BPA out, at that point, the American Chemistry Council went to the FDA and asked them, or I'm not sure if they asked them to ban it or they said, it's okay, you can ban it if you want to, it's fine with us. Because it gives them a competitive advantage over companies in China and other areas that are still putting bisphenol A. So the FDA never really took a stand on it. It was just that the American Chemistry Council told them, okay, it's okay now, we're not using it anyway. But what's worse is that BPA is still being used to line cans, food cans. And when food is put into a can, the temperature is very high. And bisphenol A is more likely to leach when it's exposed to when it's subjected to very high temperatures. So we're still getting BPA in canned food. We're still getting BPA from cash register receipts because that paper, that thermal paper, is often coated with bisphenol A in powder form, and that very easily rubs off onto our hands. Another problem is that because there's been such a public outcry against bisphenol A, a lot of manufacturers, as the baby bottle manufacturers did, are working on getting bisphenol A out of their products, but some of the replacements for bisphenol A have the same, if not worse, hormone disrupting effects as BPA did. So just because a bottle says BPA free doesn't necessarily mean that it's safe. And sometimes we know what they've put in it because they'll advertise it, and sometimes we don't know what they've put in it. There was a study that was done of several different water bottles and baby bottles. Some of them contained BPA and some of them didn't. Some of them contained alternatives to BPA. And what they did was they subjected those bottles to human breast cancer cells, and they could see if there was estrogenic activity if the breast cancer cells grew. And some of the bottles without BPA caused even more estrogenic activity than the bottles with.
Wow. Besides personal responsibility and personal action, group action is so important. I mean, considering how huge and powerful the plastics industry is. Where you live, you're from Oakland, California, and in the Bay Area, there have been some very successful efforts fighting plastic bags in stores. Describe what's occurred.
Well, with plastic bags, the city of San Francisco took the lead, and they banned plastic bags in grocery stores and I believe large pharmacies. It was a limited ban. It only applied to large retailers. And then just this year, October 1st of 2012, they expanded the ban. And so the ban on plastic bags applies to all retail stores except for restaurants. Restaurants will be in 2013. And they placed a fee on paper bags. And the reason for that is because paper has its own environmental impacts. They didn't want to encourage people to just switch to a different type of disposable bag. They want to encourage people to bring their own reusable bags instead. So that's what's gone on, and I think that that's working. In Oakland, we tried to ban plastic bags, and the plastic bag industry sued the city, which is what their strategy has been. Because in California, we have a law that says if you're doing something that may have some kind of an environmental impact, you have to do an environmental impact report in order to get it approved. And so the plastic bag industry is requiring cities to produce environmental impact reports, and these are very, very expensive and labor intensive, and cities just don't have the resources to do it, so a lot of them give up.
Speaking of resources, I mean, the book is studded every few pages with various heroes in this fight against plastics, or this fight for, non-chemical living, and organizations. Can you just give us just resources and organizations, just an idea of where people can go besides your excellent website, myplasticfreelife.com. Beyond that, where could people seek out help, information, and you stress in your book, become aware.
Right. So one organization that has sprung up that is kind of encompasses a lot of other organizations is the Plastic Pollution Coalition. And I think this is the first organization that's specifically focused on plastic as a problem rather than many other environmental problems. So that's a good place to go and get information about campaigns that are going on. Some other organizations that are great are Clean Water Action, which has led the charge on getting styrofoam out of cities and out of schools. A great video to watch is called Bag It. It's a film called Bag It. You can rent it, you can get it from Netflix, you can buy the DVD now. It starts out talking about plastic bags, but it moves on to everything to do with plastic. They talk about the chemicals in plastic, they talk about recycling plastic, and the thing that I really enjoy about Bag It is that it's done in a humorous style. So they cover some very, very serious information, but they add humor as well. So I've actually watched it multiple times, and I can still enjoy it. It's good for kids too. They have an educational version. A book that's really informative is called Plastic: A Toxic Love Story. And if you want to know more about actually what plastic is and the history of plastic and just really in depth about how we got to where we are, that is a book by Susan Frankel, and that's a really great one to read. Plastic Ocean is a book by Captain Charles Moore. He's the person who actually discovered the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, and so he tells his story in that book. There are lots of really cool videos on YouTube that have to do with plastic and plastic bags, which can be really fun. And I list those in my book as well. A
very important one, I think, is Blue Vinyl.
Yes.
By Judith Helfand. She was from Long Island, and her folks resided their little house with vinyl siding. And poor Judith ends up with cancer, and she goes to the root of vinyl siding.
I love that movie. That's a great one.
It's quite good. Now, are there certain areas that plastic, maybe in hospitals, what do you do in hospitals in regard to plastic? Thinking of where the blood goes into a bag. How do you work that out?
You know, plastic in hospitals is a double-edged sword because on the one hand, we need it in order to keep people alive often. Apparently blood lasts longer in plastic than it used to in glass. But on the other hand, it's leaching chemicals, it's leaching phthalates into the IV, into the blood. Phthalates are also hormone disrupting chemicals, and they're used to make vinyl soft because PVC, polyvinyl chloride, which we just think of as vinyl, it's naturally very hard and brittle. And so they add plasticizers called phthalates to make it soft. And those chemicals are very dangerous, especially to developing babies, which are, so a lot of hospitals have been working on getting those phthalates out of IV and blood bags for babies. But we need them to go further. And this is where I think green chemistry comes into play. You know, we really need chemists that can work on producing materials that can hold these vital substances for us, but that aren't poisoning us at the same time.
The other thing, too, well, again, plastic's ubiquitous, and there seems to be an expansion. For example, in the airline field, planes are being made, I mean, the newest planes, plastic to save on fuel, or cars to make them lighter. And it's really throwing a monkey wrench into nature. As you stress in the book, plastics, you know, are not in harmony with nature. They don't break down. You put them in an incinerator to get rid of them, and toxic fumes are let off. What about that? Cars, new planes.
Yeah, it's a problem, and also it's also a dual kind of thing because plastic makes cars a lot more lightweight, and so therefore the plastics industry says that plastic is environmentally friendly because we're reducing our emissions because the cars are lighter. But on the other hand, that new car smell that's coming off of your dashboard is phthalates leaching, off-gassing into the air that you're breathing. So I think that this is a real challenge for inventors, for people with a lot of ingenuity, and we have it in the United States. You know, we have people who are so creative, and I want to see these smart people put their creativity into creating solutions for this problem. So it's partly our responsibility to reduce our consumption as much as possible, ask ourselves if we really need certain things in the first place, get rid of as much disposable plastic as we can, and then when it comes to these big things that make our lives better, like transportation or computers or things like that, we need companies to make things better for us, make things out of reused materials, make things out of safer materials. And going back to computers, one thing that I like to do is to buy things secondhand instead of buying things new, and try to reduce how much new stuff I'm purchasing in the first place.
Thank you, Beth Terry, for writing this terrific book, Plastic Free, and thank you for watching. I'm Karl Grossman. To learn more about the Enviro Close-Up series of programs, just go to our website, envirovideo.com.